Zofrin, and they're having a whole party. So as a Litvish Gadol, he says, "Vos is the Simcha." So they say, no, the Hatshuf Vat Shem is your tzad. So he says, "Vos ba'ach." Oh, that's the chiddush. Ba'ach, wenn sie da your tzad, sind in der Simcha mit Chaitzach. Bei uns man Mishnayis, man sagt Kaddish, man sitzt the Kevid Reish. What's the pshat? So the truth of the matter, if you think about this question, this is a question that actually existed by the Dor Day, by the Dor Midrash. Why? Because when they thought Moshe Rabbeinu died, and the Satan showed them a picture of Moshe lying in his mitah, it says the Yakubu Latzachik. They got up to party. Yet later on, when Moshe Rabbeinu Taka died, it says they sat by veils 30 days. So ask Klal Yisrael themselves: do you party when Moshe dies, or do you sit by veils for 30 days? There, it's just very posh. By the Egel, Moshe was just a rebel. He was a Balmoifis. He meets Shamsov, he meets the Makkis. Yeah, rebel is a weg. Balmoifis is a weg. Can sich freien. But after Matan Torah and Moshe Rabbeinu came a Rosh Yeshiva. Now Rosh Yeshiva is nifter dort nach mit seinen Veilers the Deutsch. So that's the story they say over. I don't know if it's true, but it's a good story, so it doesn't have to be true. Okay. It's not respectful to have the body of a woman on public display, and therefore they never leave it displayed. So this is the last line at the bottom of Chav Zayin Amud Beis. Amri Nahardai, the people from Nahardai said, Lo Yishanu, this does not apply, Ella Chaya, only a woman who had just given birth, and there's fluids unfortunately leaking out of her, and therefore it's going to be very not pakovidik. Aval Shai Noshim, but a woman that's not flowing any type of fluid, manichin. And there are those who say that nowadays, being that we don't just have the body plain, the bodies are contained in a box, where even if there's some fluids oozing, it's not going to be noticeable, it's not going to drip on the floor. So this whole issue will not be a problem today. All women, you don't put them in public to be masked with them. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't be masked with them at all. You should put them straight into the ground. Miriam, but he covered Sham. Right after she died, it was straight to the Kvura, no stops along the way. Samach Lamisa Kvura. Rama Belazar, Af Miriam Beneshika Mesa. Miriam died Beneshika, Af Miriam, not only Moshe and Aaron, but Miriam as well. How do we know that? Asya Sham Mi Moshe. So it says in the pasuk, but Thomas Sham Miriam, but he covers Sham, and it says at the end of the Vorim, by Yamas Sham Moshe. So just like Sham by Moshe means Beneshika, so too Sham by Miriam means Beneshika. Umipneiman loy nemar ba al pi Hashem. By Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Vayomash Sham Moshe Eved Hashem Beretz Moed al pi Hashem. It doesn't say that by Miriam. So it's not fine to mention that Miriam has neshika with Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, the Jesus says Vatamasham, and we learned the Remiza that means that it was Mrs. Neshika. Amar Bami, Lama Nismecha, Mrs. Miriam. I'm very happy that I picked this here because the screen is shining on an empty room because you're out of the vision of the camera. So this way, I'll think someone's here. Thank you, Victor, for saving me. Lama Nismecha, Mrs. Miriam, Leparshas Parah. Why was the Misa of Miriam put near the Parsha of Parah, a Parah Aduma? Lo Yimulach to teach us. Ma Parah Aduma. Just like Parah Aduma, Mechaperes is Mechaper. And Tosha says, which Aver is Mechaper on? Is Mechaper al Maisa Ego. Af Misas and Shosadikim, Mechaperes. So too, the Misa of Sadikim are Mechaper. And Tosha gives us a little bit of insight as to how this works. And Tosha says, top Tosha on Chofres Amar Aleph, Ma Paradum Chaperes Pirish al Maisa Egel, Chudamina b'Medrash, like the Medrash says, Moshe Levena Shivcha Shetinaf Paltirin Shal Melech. Imagine the child of one of the servants throws up on the floor in the palace. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is, Omer HaMelech Tov Imei, the Melech will say, let his mother come and clean up after him. So the tzaddikim are like the mothers; they're the stewards of Klal Yisrael, and Hashem says they will be mechaper on their children. That's why we use a parah aduma. because it's a female cow that's mechaper on the egel. So a mother being mechaper for the children, so too the tzaddikim are mechaper for Klal Yisrael.
Many shittas hold that the mitzvah Por Aduma was given before the Chet Egel. As a matter of fact, right? The Moshe Rabbeinu came down, so he didn't come down the first time. He didn't come down with the mitzvah Por Aduma. And there's another sheet that says it was given at Mora Por Aduma. So how could it be a kapor for Chet Egel if the Chet Egel hadn't yet happened?
So first of all, is it possible that the Rebbeinu knew there would be a Chet Egel?
Yeah, I know, but what about the whole idea cause and effect? You know, why live? The Rebbeinu knows everything.
So that's the problem. That's the whole problem with the Rebbeinu knowing everything. So how does that work with Bechira? Because Baruch knows in advance what we're going to do. So
right.
These are the big shilas.
But if we're talking about cause and effect, right? It's a kapara. The kapara has to happen after the chet, not before the chet.
Right, but the commandment for it came before. But the answer to this is the same answer to every question.
Okay.
But it's a good question. It's a huge question. But how it works. But that's the whole shiloh here. Amar Beloser, Lama Nisbacha Misas Aharon Levitic. Why is the parsha that discusses Aharon's Misa? Why is that right near the parsha where the Torah discusses Big Tekuna? Dr. Moore, the same thing. Ma Big Tekuna Machaper, just like Big Tekuna are Machaper. Af Misason Shosadik Machaperes. A Big Tekuna are Machaper. If I remember correctly, the Kasoines is Machaper on Ritzicha. The Michnasayim, the pants. So the shirt is Machaper on Ritzicha. The Michnasayim, the pants are Mechaper on Arayis because it covers the Arayis, right? It covers the Makmerva. The Mikbas, which is the hat, is Mechaper, I think, on Machshovas Royis. And the Avnei, the Gartel, I'm just looking over here, he quotes, the Gartel is Mechaper on, he brings down more the big mail also, so I'll actually focus on over here. I can see it better. So he brings down that the Ksanis is Mechaper Shvichazam, is also often the Gemara. Mechlasayim is Arayis. Mitznefis is Al Gasay Ruach. I'm sorry, not from Machshov choice. Al Gasay Ruach because it's up on top. The Avdit is Mechaper on the Hir Alei. And the Choshen is Mechaper on Dinim. The Ephod is Mechaper on Avodah Zarah. The Me'il is Mechaper on Lashon Hara. And we know that this is Mechaper on Tumah V'Tayra, or it's also on Azus Ponim. So those are the different Averis that the Big Kahuna are Mechaper on. So just like Big Kahuna are Mechaper, so too Misas and Shal Sadikim are Mechaper. Tanur Rabbanim, Meis Pisa. What if Rachman Litzlan? Oh, we shouldn't say Rachman Litzlan. That could be a good thing. But if someone dies very suddenly, Zui Misa Chatupa. That's like a Chapta Mesa. We're going to give descriptions of quick misas, and Tosha says, Lo Yadana, Maishna Hu Uminali. Like it's a problem. How do you know? What's the difference? But clearly, from the Gemara's tone, we'll see that the connotation is that it's a shtickle like chorus, where someone gets suddenly cut off. But again, we're going to soon see that that's lav dafka. Mes bisam zui misa chatufa. What if the person was ill for one day, and then the person died? Zui misa techufa. He's being pushed out. Zui misas magefa. That's a misas magefa. Shenemar ben adam hinini lakeich mcha es machmer einecha b'magefa. So I believe Eoy was told that he's going to lose his wife in a magefa. No, I'm sorry, this is in Yecheskel, so it's not Eoy. And then it says Uchsiv v'adaber lo'om ba'boiker v'tamas ishti ba'erev. So you see that Yoy Mecher Umeis, from one day to the next, it's considered a Magefa. Shnei Yamim Umeis, Zui Misa D'chuya, that's a pushed Misa. Gimel, 3 days of illness, that's called Gaira, Hashem is screaming at you. Arba is Nazifa, Hashem is being marchik you. Chamisha, if one is sick for 5 days and then passes on, Zui Mises Kolodim, that's the normal, typical death of a person. I don't know how this plays out in Metzias nowadays. Amr Abchanan, and we'll see the Raya also is a little bit problematic. Micra, where do you see that 5 days is the normal time for someone to become ill and to pass away? Because it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, let's look at the pasuk. It says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hein karvu yomecha lamus, call Yeshua, and let's do the changing of the guards. So we dash in the pasuk, Hein karvu yomecha lamus. Hein is chad, is 1 day. Karvu is 2 days, so 1 and 2 is 3. Yomecha is 2, so 3 and 2 is 5. So right off the bat, the Mefarshim speak out. Moshe Rabbeinu, so Tosfos lav dafka. This whole thing is lav dafka. The lo yeshkechana the Moshe Yechayla. Moshe was not sick for 5 days before. It's not mentioned anywhere that he was sick. To the contrary, Moshe because of Harbe, Pasuk Kamet Psiyos. He wrote a lot and he walked a lot. The Lazachas could perish chumash. So Moshe Rabbeinu talks. He looked like a young man. So Moshe Rabbeinu in fact didn't get sick at all. So the drasha is it's a drasha, but avada that's not what really happened. Moshe Rabbeinu was healthy till the last minute. Hein is chad. Where do you get that hein means chad? The hein korbi mechalamus. Where do you get the word hein means chad? Shekain beloshin yavani kaira la'achas hein. They use the word hein for one. So everybody always asks when we go to these gemaras. So because in Greek the word hein means one. So that means that's what it means in the Torah. The Torah, you can use Greek words, but the answer to that is simple: is that the first language that existed was Lashon Kodesh, and all the other languages extracted some parts of Lashon Kodesh and developed a language around it. So it's logical to find remnants of Lashon Kodesh in all languages. L'moshel, we know that the way to say a front axle in the Vrit is rear axle kadmi, right? That means rear axle must be really a Hebrew word. And if they use that word, nowadays in English, so it might, you see, it stems from Hebrew. So rear axle must be a Hebrew word.
I had this drive.
Right? Drive is a Hebrew word.
Drive.
Mm-hmm. There you got it.
But I knew that, but we don't have in Greeks use this word to mean one.
Right.
Where in Hebrew do you see that to mean one? If the word is from Hebrew.
I guess you see that the word has a connotation of one. And could be that's why the Greeks use that word to say one, because even in Lashon Kodesh you find it has a connotation of one.
How is Cain behold one?
Because I guess behold one day. Behold one. In other words, I don't know so well. I don't know clearly. In other words, so more fighting. Neish v'chamishim shana, someone who passes away at 50 years old, zuhi misas kares. That is the misa of kares. Chamishim mishnayim. What if someone dies at 52? Chamishim mishnayim shana. Zuhi misasei shel Shmuel haramasi. Shmuel died at 52 years old, and the way we know he died at 52 years old is because his mother, after he was Gomal Yelad, after he was 2 years old, she gave him over to Shmuel, and he was by Shmuel for 50 years. So you know Shmuel survived for 52 years. So that's not curse, it's Misasa of Shmuel Harmosi. The Gemara is going to comment on that soon. Shishim, someone who dies at 60, Zui Misa V'dei Shemayim. So it's not really putting Shmuel into a good zone. So we'll see in a minute how that works. Amar Marzutra, Mikra, where do you see that 60 is Misa B'dei Shemayim? And here Misa B'dei Shemayim doesn't necessarily mean the Oynish. It means it's the time where people die. Because it says in the Pasuk, Tovai Bekelach Elai Kover. What the Pasuk literally means is when the grain is dried out in the field and it's ready, that's when it's gathered together. So when the grain is dry and ready, then kavar, it comes to the kavar. And we learn bekelach is begematria shitin, because chaf is 20, lamed is 30, that's 50, and 8 and 2 is 10. So the gematria of bekelach is 60. So bekelach al kavar, when someone's bekelach, when someone's 60, that's when he comes to the kavar. She shouldn't happen. Shivim is seva. Someone who lives till 70, that's called seva, that's called an old age. Shmoinim is gevurais. That's already someone who has strength. V'chsiv Yemesha Neishenu B'hem Shivim Shana, but then the Gvurais, if there's strength there, then it's Shemonim Shana. Okay. Amar Rabba, Mechamishim Vashishim Shana. So I should just comment the famous story with the Satmar Rebbe. Somebody once said, it says in the Pirkei Avos, I believe, it says Ben Shishim L'Zikna, it says Ben Shishim L'Zikna, I think it says. So he came in one day depressed and he told the Satmar Rebbe, I feel very sad today. He says, why? He says, because the Mishnah calls me an old man, Ben Shishim L'Zikna. So the Satmar Rebbe said, I don't think you need to worry about it. I don't think you're covered under this Mishnah. How do I know? Because it says Ben Arbam Labina. When you're 40, you'll become wise. That didn't happen to you. So you don't need to worry about the Ben Shishim L'Zikna either. So Zok the Gemara. Amar Rabba, let's analyze the previous brisa. Mechamishim v'achishim shana zu mises kares. From 50 to 60 is kares. So Rabba seems to be disagreeing. We just had a moment ago 50 is kares and 60 is mitzvah shemayim, and in between is nothing. But really, from 50 to 60 is kares. I've hide the lechashav. So why didn't it say it beferish that way? From 50 to 60 is kares. So tomorrow mishum kvoid yishol shmuel ramasi, because we don't want to insinuate that Shmuel had kares. So the question really is did Shmuel have kares? So the Mefarshim speak about it. So one of the things that it says in the Mefarshim, I believe the Shar Tshuva, is that kares means someone was supposed to live a long life, and he did an Aveira, and because of that, his years were cut off. However, someone who only had l'chatchila that amount to live, that's not called kares. That was his lifespan. So Shmuel originally was only given 52 years to live. It was never deduced. It was never deducted from. And therefore, it's not kares. So what we learn from here is, from the age that someone dies, you really can't learn anything, because it's possible that it was kares, but it's just as possible that those were the amount of years that were originally allotted to the person. So basically, after all said and done, we don't know. Okay, Rabbi Yosef, when he became 60 years old, they made him, he used to make a big birthday party for himself. There's rather a lot of talk in the Achronim if it's appropriate to make a birthday party. I think in Lubavitch they make birthday parties for the on the Rebbe's birthday. But there's a shot if you're supposed to make birthday parties. I know that the Rukas Abois and the Tzelem Rav was against making birthday parties. But Rabbi Yosef made a birthday party. When he was 60 years old, he made himself a birthday bash. Amar, you know why I'm making a party? Because nafak limi kares. Now that I'm 60, I know I passed that period of time where it would be kares. So it's a big milestone. I want to celebrate. Amalei Abaye, nihid nafak le mar mikares deshani. You're right. The kares of years you passed 60. But mikares to yoimi minafak mar. The kares of Yomi, referring to what we learned earlier, that if someone dies in 1 day, or in 2 days, or in 3 days, so the chatufa, the chufa, the magefa, the ga'ira, the nazifa, all those levels of 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, that you don't know that you have passed that, because maybe that will still happen to you. So your question is, what if someone does an Aveira that's mechayiv him with kares after he's 60 years old? Okay, that happens to be a very, very good kasha. And it's spoken about. I think it could be Tosfos talks about it. It was brought down. But there's also the Indian of kares shenichnas lazara, his children died. So there's more to kares, and it's nichras na'adam haba. And that's what the shaila is about. If kares is in this world or in the next world, and to bring a raya that kares has to be in the next world, because what if someone over 60 gets it? So there has to be a next world component to it. Well, there's a component on this world and a component on the next world. Again, we don't understand exactly how it works, because someone could die young and then it has nothing to do with kares. I guess so. I guess so. We have a no return policy. Interesting. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we don't. Okay. So when they told him, you don't know that you're completely free of Karis because you still might die in a Karis fashion. Amalai said, "Nekait lachmiya pal gabiyatcha." So okay, fine, but I'm celebrating that I don't have Karis to show me. I'm celebrating this. Hopefully, the other thing won't happen to me either. Zokim Rav Huna noch nafshe pisai. Rav Huna died suddenly, so you might say that he had Karis the Yomi. So have a Kadagi Rabbanan. The Rabbanan were worried about him. Maybe he had Karis. Tana Luzuga the Mahaidayev, a pair of Talmid Chacham who came from this city, said as follows: when do you say that someone who dies suddenly is a shtickle misa chatufa loishanu el shaloi higia legvurais? That's if he didn't reach 70. Once someone reaches 70, zui misa neshika. To the contrary, the faster someone dies, the better it is. He doesn't have to suffer being sick, and therefore it's not a concern at all. So basically, your Yosef only needed 10 more years till he was safe from the curse of Yomi as well, because once he would turn 70, he would be fine. Let me see what Taisha says over here, because I remember seeing somewhere in the Rishonim that brings a raya that curse must be something in Yenevelt, because if not, what about someone who's over 60, like Matthias, how can he get curse? So let's see what Taisha says. The Gemara brings a raya. He may say midbar. From the may say midbar, Darminon, it says, Loi meis echad mehen pachos mi ben shishim. No one died less than 60 years old. Misa da hacha mashma zui misa b'dei shemayim. It's mashma that shishim is misa b'dei shemayim. The chorus b'chamishim at shishim, v'loi shishim b'chlal. But if someone is actually 60, that's no longer chorus. That's misa b'dei shemayim, and v'zeu shezari nichmas. And chorus has the extra feature that the zara is nichras as well. The children are also nichras. V'yesh mevashim the chamishim he misa b'dei shemayim. That 50 is misa b'dei shemayim. V'cheisa b'hadezaroi have a chorus. If not only a person passes away in his 50s, but his children also pass away, that's chorus. The shishim misas koladim, and shishim is the normal time of death. V'shabbos b'perek sheni b'reishavam is harachti. So Tosha speaks about it in greater length in other places. What? The verse is 80? And then verse Shemanim Shana. Right. Oh, Shalai Gvila Gvuris. I hear. So he had to survive another 20 years in order to get out of the. So I guess he made a 60th birthday, and I guess he would have made an 80th birthday as well, because then he got over the second hump.
Someone dies, even if it's long to die, the curse. 59 to 80 to 79. Only if it dies at 70, it's curse.
Well, and even then, we don't know for sure that it's curse. Could be that was his original time allotment, right? Shmuel did not curse.
If it was 70, it's curse.
I don't know if that's right either. I mean, like we have an excuse for Shmuel because that was his allotment. I don't know if we have an explanation of a fast death, right? Because the truth of the matter is, it's Mishas Neshika if it's Bigvuris. But at the end of the day, even when someone's young, it's not Geshmak to suffer. So I don't know how these things work. I don't know. We don't understand how these things work. We should never have to understand. Well, they say people are dying to find out, right? But we shouldn't know from these things. Okay. Zogt the Heilige Gemara weiter. Amar Rava. Rava said, Chaye, our life and how long we live. Bani, how many children we have. Umazoini in our prenasa. Loi b'schusi talam milsa. They're not told in Eschus, Ela b'mazla told in It's only told in Mazel. Rek Toisvis. What does that mean? The Hikshu b'Toisvis. Hada Amaron b'Soiv Shabbos ein Mazel Yisrael. At the end of the Shabbos, it says that we're not controlled by the Mazalos. Yesh Leimers of Toisvis l'pa'amim mishtana al yedei Mazel. Sure, we're not meshubah to the Mazel, but we're influenced by the Mazel. Ki hanu dehasam u'pa'amim she'ein mishtana. Sometimes the Mazel will impact us, and sometimes not. Because so we're not completely disconnected from the mazel, but we're not directly connected either. So Zok Gemara, how do you know that? The Rabbi of Rab Chisda, Tarvayu Rabbanon Tzadika Hapa, Both Rabbi and Chisda were both great tzaddikim. Mar matli v'asi mitra, umar matli v'asi mitra. Either one of Rabbi or Reb Chisda, if they would daven for rain, they would bring rain. Nevertheless, Reb Chisda chaya tishin atartishnim. Reb Chisda lived until 92. Rabbi chaya arboim. Rabbi only lived 40 years. So you see, the chaye was not telling their sitkas. Next, Bei Rav Chisda shitin hiluli, there were 60 chasnes, and Bei Rabbi shitin tichli, there were 60 levayas. So that's bunny. He lost a lot of children. And Taisha says, shitin hiluli yesh mefarshim lav dafka. It just means Rav Chisda had children getting married. It was Levitic, and Rabbi had a lot of agmas nefesh. And the third, so that's bunny. And then Mezoni, Bei Rav Chisda smida lakalbe v'loy mitboi. They served wheat, flour, clean white flour, even to the dogs, and they never were missing. They always had plenty, so they always had an abundance. But Beirabba, Nahama Desari Inchi, even people couldn't afford white flour, and they ate bread of barley, and even that was scarce. So you see clearly that there is a mazel that influences it, and Rabbi's mazel was such that he didn't have such a good life like Reb Chisda did. Vamarava, Hanit Las Mili, Boy Kamishmaya. I asked from the Rebbeinu Shalom for three things. Tarti Yahavali, two of the three were given to me. Chada, one of the three, Lo Yahavali, was not granted to me. Chachma Seder Rav Huna. I asked for the Chachma of Rav Huna. Rav Huna was a great Chacham. The Usrei Rav Chisda, the Ashiris of Rav Chisda. The Yavali, I got them both. Then I asked for An Visanuse, the Rabbi Bar Rav Huna. I asked for the Anivus of Rabbi Bar Rav Huna, but Lo Yahavali, it wasn't given to me. So the Mefarshim I'll ask, something like Anivus is a mitzvah you have to work on, right? And we know that Anava is one of the things that you're supposed to work on because it's in the list of Pinchas ben Yair's Brisa that leads up to Yer Shemayim. So clearly it's something that's b'dei Adam. So what do you mean I davened and didn't give it to me? So the answer, I davened that I should have Siyata D'Shmaya. My effort should pay off and it should be successful, but it didn't work. I might dare to argue maybe it did work. Maybe Rabbi Bar Rav Huna was a big honor. I'm sure people might disagree with that. But I call upon him. So you see that not everything is totally in my simplicity and tefillah. There's an element of mazel. That's right. At the end of Stoita, I think Rebbe said it says Mishavatla something Batla Nova. So Rebbe said Loi Tema Nova the Ikana. Don't say Anova because of me. So Pashup Shad of the Gemara is that how can you say Batla Nova? I'm around still. So if I'm around still, you see there's a Nivus around. So that raises an eyebrow, like what Rebbe think about Katan that I'm on. So I think the Vilna Gaon explained. Rebbe said Loi Tema Nova the Ikana. If Klal Yisrael took me as the Nasi, if they took me as the Rav, they're Anovim. They must be big Anovim if they settled for somebody like me. That's how he explained it. Zok Gemara. Rav Sa'irim was the name. Rav Sa'irim, Rabbi Barley, Achva the Ravahava. He was the brother of Rava. Rava, the brother whose name was Sa'irim. Yosef Kamei the Rava. He was sitting in front of Rava. He was sitting with his brother. Chazia Tavakamanamnim. He saw Rava saw, or his brother saw that Rava was on his deathbed, and Rava was about to die. So Amalei, so Rava told his brother, who was sitting there with him by his death, Leimar, do me a favor, Rab Soyer, could you speak today to her that he shouldn't speak to the Malach Mavis that he should go easy on me? He should go easy on me. So Rab Soyer told Rava, Amalei Mar Lavshus Vinehu. What do you think? I'm like buddy with the Malach Mavis, and you're not. You also are buddy with the Malach Mavis. And the Mefarshim tell us that I guess Rava had a relationship with the Malach Mavis. I'm not sure exactly what type of a relationship he had, but you can tell, you can speak to yourself. Amalei Rava said, no, I cannot. You know why? Given the Imser Mazla, once I was given over to the Malach Mavis, which means he was given permission to take me, Lo Ashkafi. He doesn't listen to me anymore. It's very similar to a politician. Once I'm elected, once I'm voted, I'm in power, then I don't listen to my constituents anymore. So now I have no voice with him. Therefore, I have to ask you if you would be so kind and speak to him that he shouldn't go hard on me. Amalei, okay, do me a favor. I will do that, but I want to know if my talk with him, my pleas will work. L'schaza limar, come back to me after you die and let me know how it went. is chazulei. So in fact, Rava came to his brother after he died. Amalei havalei lamar tzara. Did you end up having pain? Was it painful, your death? Amalei kirivda de kosilta. It hurt as much as a needle prick when I was doing hakazas dam. Like when you're getting a blood test, that needle prick, it hurts as much. So I'm not sure if the Gemara means to say that it wasn't so painful, or if it means it was terrible. It all depends on who takes blood from you. If they could get right into your vein, but sometimes they get into your skin and they dig and crack till they find your vein. Did that ever happen to you? So I'm not sure which one this means over here. Anyway, Rava have a Yosef Kamed Rav Nachman. Rava was sitting in front of Rav Nachman. Chazia to come him. He saw Rav Nachman was passing away. So Rav Nachman told Rava, do me a favor, speak to the Malach, tell him to go easy on me. Mar lav adam choshavu. You are Rav Nachman. You don't think you can speak to? You don't think you could speak to him yourself? Man choshev. Who's choshev? Man sofin, which also means choshev. Tosha says sofin is choshev. Man rakia, who is so spread out, who has everything in order, that is in perfect order, that he should be able to challenge the Yetzer Hara. I'm not in that position. So I guess Rava said I'm going to have to do that. Amalei l'schazeli mar. At least tell me, come back to me, and let me know how it went. Is chazeli. Amalei havalei lamar tzayra. Did you have pain? Amalei kemishchal b'nitza mechalba. You know how difficult it was to pull my neshama out of my goof? It was as difficult as it is to take a hair out of milk. It literally slides out. In other words, it's practically painless. Nevertheless, don't think it was a piece of cake, because the Amarli HaKadosh Baruch Hu Zil Bahu Alma Kadhavis. If Hashem would say, you know what, I let you go back down to Olam Hazeh if you want, Loi Ba'ina, I wouldn't do it again. You know why? Because I wouldn't want to go through that death again. The Novish B'Yasusay, I was terrified. So as easy as it seems, just like taking hair out of milk, it was such a terrifying experience. I wouldn't even want to live again, because I wouldn't want to have to go through that death again. They say that Yeshiva Brachim go straight to Gan Eden. Why? Because they have to get up in the morning for Shachris. Then after Shachris, they're tired, so they take a nap before first Seder, and they have to get up again. And then after first Seder, they take a nap before second Seder, they get up again. So they have Mesiras Nefesh, they have to get up 3 times a day. That's Mamash Mesiras Nefesh. Similar to what Rab Nachman was saying, is that I don't want to be born again, I don't want to live again, if it means that I have to die again.
What do you think? Why didn't Rava just tell us to, he already heard from us, not, why did Torah was asking, tell me what you experienced?
I guess every person is different. Yeah.
I want to know what kind of tzaddik you were, because we're going to see what kind of issue you had. I don't know, what's the, seems like a strange.
Well, I hear, because it was the same Rava.
Rava already asked.
I hear. I guess
yeah. See how you compare to your Rebbe.
Rabbi Lozer have a ochel truma. Rabbi Lozer was once upon a time in the middle of eating truma. Is Chazaleh, he saw the Malchamobus coming, and he said, Malchamobus, can't you pick a better time? Like your timing is off. Amalei truma kachilna. I'm eating truma. So what do you want? You want to kill me now, and then all the truma that I'm eating now will become tummy? Come on, vidach tan cycle. Go away. Come back at a better time. So the Malchamobus told him, V'lav kodesh yukri, aren't you a kodesh? If you're a kodesh, you wouldn't be mitama. Anyway, chalfalei shaita, he was able to get it pushed off. He was able to reschedule that date. Rav Sheshes is chazal b'shuka. He once met the Malach HaMovus in the street, the shuk. Omerlei b'shuka kibehema isa lagabe beisa. What kind of chutzpah do you have? You want to kill me like an animal in the shuk? Wait till I'm home, and over there you could talk to me about killing me. Rav Ashi is chazal b'shuka. Rav Ashi met the Malach HaMovus in the shuk. Omerlei, you know what? I'm happy to come. But Israchli Tlosin Yoimin, give me 30 days. Why do I want 30 days? But Hadri L'Talmudoi, I want to chaz over all my learning. Damrisu, the Velt says, Ashri mi Shabolakam Talmud B'Yodoi. I want to have Talmud B'Yodoi. I want to be able to chazer and know my information for my fair. So give me 30 days. So he didn't wait to the end of the 30 days. B'Yom Tolson, already in the 30th day, the Malach HaMovus came back. Also, Amalei, my kulahai. Why are you in such a rush? Wait till the end of the day. It's day 30. So you said, I have till the end of the day still. So why are you coming here? So the Malach HaMovus said, because Chadach Raglei Rabbi Nosson. Rav Huna Bar Nosson is going to be taking over the Nesius after you. And it's already his time. Bein Malchus Noigas B'chaverta Afilu Kabbalah Nima. I have to make sure to get you in at the right time. So there's all these shilas, all these previous cases. How were they able to reschedule? So the Mefarshim explained that's how the original schedule was set up, but the Malach HaMavos had to work towards it, so he had to go through the process. That's what some people say. The shaila over here is the Malach HaMavos came early before the end of the day. So what was a Havami to be able to push it off? So then there are those who learn that Ein Malchus Nagas B'Chavita is just a concept, but it's not a hard halacha that applies by a Rav. It might apply by a Melech. So there's a shaila about that in the Rishonim as well. Reb Chisda, this is an unbelievable story. Reb Chisda lahavi yachale. The Malach HaMavos tried, he couldn't. You know why he couldn't? Reb Chisda never was not learning. So he had to, the Malach HaMavos had to outsmart Reb Chisda. Soluk Yosef ba'arza de Beirav. What happened was there was a large tree trunk, or a large tree, maybe he was standing near the Beis Medrash. So the Malach HaMavos went inside the Beis Medrash. It went inside the tree. Paka arza. He burst open the tree, so it made a huge explosion. And for that moment, Reb Chisda was startled with Shasak, and then V'yachale, and then in that moment, the Malach HaMavos was able to get to Reb Chisda. Reb Chiyah have a much of a mikravah. He couldn't get to him. Yom Echad, one day the Malach HaMavos, idmi like ani, he made believe like he was a poor person, knocking on Reb Chiyah's door for bread. Also Taraf Ababa, he came and knocked on the door. Amarle, afikli rifta, please bring me out bread. Afikale, he brought him bread. Amarle, so the Malach HaMavos says, the lav kamarachem mar ani, you're marachem and an ani, and you bring him bread. Ahu gavra, what about me? Amai loy kamarachem. Why don't you have rachmanos on me? Why are you not letting me do? Why are you not letting me do my job? So Gemara, amai lo kamarachamar. So Galilei, he actually uncovered, in other words, he made himself vulnerable to the Malach HaMavos. Reb Chiyah made himself vulnerable to the Malach HaMavos, and achvel shuta denura. And he showed him, or the Malach HaMavos showed him a stick of fire, and he gave himself over to be killed. And some of Forsham learned that the stick of fire that the Malach HaMavos showed him was the stick with which the Malach HaMavos was patched for not doing his job. The Malach HaMavos got patched for not doing his job. He wasn't letting him. He wasn't letting the Malach HaMavos kill him. What? Well, he probably didn't stop learning. He didn't do mitzvahs. He was not letting the Malach HaMavos kill him. So the Malach HaMavos, come on, let me kill you. I have a job to do. Okay, Zok more weiter. Noshim b'moyed, women on Moed, ma'anos avoloy metapos. They're allowed to cry, but they're not allowed to clap. And the Mishnah is going to explain what these things are. Rabbi Shmuel Aimer has smuchas lamita. The women who are right near the mita, it's covered to the mita, metapos, they can clap also. The Rosh Chadashim and the Chanukah Purim, which aren't as restricted as Moed, ma'anos umatachos, they're allowed to both do the crying and the clapping, but they're not allowed to be mekoinin, which is a higher level of awareness. And we'll see what these things are. Nikbar mace, once the mace is nikbar, loy ma'anis for loy matachos. Nothing, all the avail stops. Eza inui, what is inui? Shakulun oinus kachas. Everybody cries together about the mace. Kina, which is not allowed on Chanukah and Purim, is she'achas medaberes uchulan oinus acharah. It's one woman who's a leader, and everyone follows after her. Shenemar, like we find in the pasuk, v'lamada b'neisechem nehi, which is what everyone cries together. And then v'isha re'usa kina. One woman will teach her friend a kina, so you see it's one woman starting, and then everybody answers. This has nothing to do with the Allah of the Mishnah. Taishba says, being that this is the last Mishnah of Moed Katan, the Tana wants to end off the Masechta on a nice note. Now, whenever you hear this pasuk, it puts a smile on your face. Why does it put a smile on your face? Because no matter how long the Rosh Hashiva speaks by a hesped, when you hear those words, you know that the end is coming. So therefore, naturally, when you hear those words, it should give you the connotation of relief, because now the speech is over. My Amran, what did they say for Hespedim? So Omar Rav said, Vaila Osla, woe is the person, because he's leaving the world. Vaila Chavila, woe is to a person that he's wrapped up like a package. That's how he is now. He's been reduced to a package. Omar Rava said, Nosi de Shichnatziv Amran Hachi. The women of Shichnatziv said the following. And the following things that were said by Hespedim were relevant to the particular mace and the condition and the situation that he was in. And their comments are related to that. Vail Azla, Vail Chavila. like we said a moment ago. They said another thing. They said, good Gurma Mikacha Venamti Maya Lantichi. A bone came out of the jaw, like a tooth came out of the jaw, Venamti Maya Lantichi, and now water is going back to its source. There are those who learn that this is referring to a tzaddik that dies. And normally, if a person has good teeth, a person can eat solid foods, chew it up, and swallow. But a person who doesn't have good teeth, they need to have food that's already ground, that's already softened. So they were referring to that, saying since this tzaddik is no longer around to be mechaper and Klal Yisrael, now we have to find other ways to soften things up for Klal Yisrael. Because when someone has healthy teeth, they can chew food. So when Klal Yisrael has tzaddikim amongst them, the tzaddikim will be mechaper for them and process whatever has to be processed for them. Now that we don't have the tzaddikim, we have to find other ways of finding rachmanis. V'amarava nasi the shichnitz of Amran atuf v'chasi turu, mountains, which is typically where people were buried in Har Hazesim, Har Hamanuchos. Get dressed, prepare yourself to greet this great man, the Bar Rami Ubar Ravi. He's a tall, chosh of a person. Prepare to receive this special new person. V'amarava nasi the shichnitz of Amran shaivel istila the melsa lebar chayrin the shalimu zavde. Put on this beautiful silk clothing to a person who has nothing left. So Rashi says, Yofa Misa Kamalbo Shamelos. Misa is great for Anani because he's now freed of his financial stresses. The women used to say that because they wanted people to know, hey, there's no money here. We better chip in to help this family, to help pay for the expenses of Levaya. Vamarava, Nasir the Shichlitz of Amram, they would say, Roit v'nafel amavra v'yizufta Yosef. He ran around his whole life to make money. He was working hard, and then amavra, when he's dying, v'yizufta Yosef. I believe that means that now he doesn't have anything left. After all his running around all his life, he still doesn't have anything at all. He still Yosef is a lotion of borrowing. He still needs to borrow money to pay for Tachrichim, even though he worked and toiled his whole life. Vomra, again, trying to raise awareness so people should chip in. Vomra b'nashi the shichlitz of Amram, achno tagri, azavzagi, mividku. When the biggest merchants, when they die, then we can actually see how much money they had. So even if he acted wealthy his whole life, when it comes down to his burial, that's when we'll see if he really had anything. V'amarava, nashi the shichlitz of Amran, Musa ki Musa. This is talking about a person who suffered terribly from an illness, and they said Musa ki Musa, he died like everybody else dies. But Umar Chibule, but his Yisurim along the way were very difficult. Tanya Halir of Meir Eimer, Toiv Leches al Beis Avel, Mileches al Beis Mishnah. That's what it says in the pasuk. We see the pasuk inside. The pasuk says, "Toiv Leches al Beis Avel, Mileches al Beis Mishnah, Kasher Hu Soif Kol Adam," because that's the end of the line. That's the end of the train. V'achai Yitein Aliboy, and Achai should do tshuva. So because he knows that he's not going to be on this world forever. So Zok to Gemara. Your Meir Darshans as follows. The Vorim Shal Misa. What does it mean? What should the Chai eat Naliboy? He should think while he's alive about Misa. What should he think about? The Yasped Yaspedune, someone who is doing a chesed with Mesim, he's masped Mesim, he will be Zoicha, that when his turn comes, he'll be masped him. The Yikaver Yekrevune, if he engaged in helping bury other Mesim, he will be buried. The Yitanune, if he helped carry the mace, so he will be carried. The Yadol Yadlune, those who, if he cried, raised up his voice and cried for other Mesim, Yadlune, they will cry for him. The Ikadami, those who learned, the Lo Yadal, if he didn't make himself high and gaivadik and refrain from helping and working with a mace, then Yadlune, people will cry for him. Yechsiv Kitoiv Amrlach Alahina. Tanraban. It's better to go to a Beis El, Melech Beis Mishnah, because v'chait naliba, because then you'll realize that you're not here forever.
What's the mile?
That's even covered to a mace.
Why is that a benefit to me? Mace is dead.
I think it's covered for the mace.
How is it that?
It's an honor for the mace.
What's the mile?
Honor is a mile.
Honor's a mile? That would have been good an hour ago. Like now,
I mean, you're assuming that someone doesn't feel honor when he's vice versa. He does. Again, I can't say being there, done that. But vice versa, if it's a cover to the mace, it must be, unless they're exaggerating. Unless everyone else says, "Come on, that never." I don't know who they're talking about, pal. I'm not talking about you. Are you sure they know who's in that box? Okay.
That's good for the
Yeah.
person doing it.
I think they want to know, why does the mace benefit?
Why does it make sense? It says here, it's saying the mace benefits. You should do it so that somebody will do it for you. Why should what's good? Dead. What difference is there?
Yeah.
To Shemayim, like it's
So
like
let's get going. Right, tell her about it. Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel lost two sons, Rachman Litzlan, not together, one at a time, and this is referring to the time when Rabbi Shmuel lost his second son. Nichnasu Dalit Zekanim Menachem. Four Zekanim came in to be Menachem Abel. Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yosy Aglili, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Nezayev, Rabbi Kiva. And Rabbi Kiva was the greatest of the bunch. Amar Lahem Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon told them, "Du'u, you should know, Shechacham Gadolhu, this person who we're going to be Menachem Rabbi Shmuel is a great Chacham, Ubaki Ba'agados, and he knows Agados Klor, and therefore Al Yichanis Echad Mikem L'Soich Tivich Haveret. If one of you say something, another one of you shouldn't engage him in a conversation about it, because it's inevitable that, being that Rabbi Shmuel is such a bookie in this, you're going to end up drawing him into the conversation, which he's not allowed. So therefore, don't do that." That was one shot. Another shot, since Rabbi Shmuel knows everything, make sure don't repeat anything that somebody else says. Meaning that if somebody else has a thought, you can't repeat the same thought when it's your turn to speak. You have to come up with something new. And because of that, I'm willing to go last. In other words, no matter what you guys come up with, I'm confident that I'll come up with something that you haven't come up with yet. Patrick Rabbi Shmuel v'Omar. The Oval always starts first. So Rabbi Shmuel was feeling bad, and he said, "Rabu Avinoisov, since I have so many Averis, Takvu Avelo. That's why I got hit with Avelos twice." And Hitriach Rabbi Isov, Pam Rishoinu Ushnia. Now, my Matriach, my Rebbe's, to come to be Menachem Abel a first time and a second time. And then Reb Tarfon v'Omar, Reb Tarfon said, it says, "V'achechem kol beis Yisrael yivku es hasreifa." It says this by Nadav and Avihu. V'lo dvorim kal v'chomer u'ma Nadav v'Avihu shelo yasu el mitzvah achas. They only did one mitzvah, and this is speaking about a mitzvah on behalf of the public. Tichsiv v'yekrivu b'nei Aaron hadam elav. That was the mitzvah they did that day. Kach, nevertheless, v'achechem kol beis Yisrael yivku es hasreifa. So Banav Shoy b'Shmuel, your children, who are marbits Torah and taught Torah b'Rabbim to everybody, al achas kama v'kama, surely they're going to have a great honor. And then Rabbi Shaglili b'Omar, the subtu kol Yisrael v'kover oisai. This was the son of Yeravim ben Nevat. Yeravim was a big Rasha. He set up checkpoints not to allow people to come to be Oila Regel, and he didn't come to be Oila Regel. Nevertheless, his son, it says v'subtu kol Yisrael v'kover oisai. He only did one good thing, which the Gemara will tell us soon what he did. It says v'sabtu like kol Yisrael. What is the good deed that Aviyah ben Yeravim did? So tomorrow, observe Reb Chanina bar Papa. There's two opinions. He also, at one point, was one of the guards who didn't let people be Oila Regel, but when it was his turn, he went and he was Oila Regel himself. Or he was Mabatal everything, but he did one good thing. And then it says, B'shalom Thomas, in peace you'll die. This was told to Tzidkiah. And it was an honor for a king. A king's belongings shouldn't be benefited, shouldn't be enjoyed by somebody other than the king. So because of that, when the king died, out of honor for him, they burnt everything that he used so that They weren't able to auction off on Amazon years later the king's stick and the king's chair because everything got burnt because it wasn't respectful that anybody should use the Kohen's thing. What did he do? He took Yirmiyah out of the board that he was thrown into. Kach, he was given the full honor of a melech. Then Rabbi Kiva and then Rabbi Kiva said his piece. It says, and this is referring to the hesped on Mashiach ben Yosef, Lasad Lavai. How big will his hesped be? Kemisped hahadrimain, the biggest Megiddo. It'll be as big as the hesped that was given for Hadrimain, the biggest Megiddo. There's no such person. It never happened. So this puzzle doesn't make any sense. From Rabbi Yosef, if it wasn't for Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, we would have no clue what this puzzle was talking about because there was no Hadrimain and there was no hesped for him in the biggest of Megiddo. So what did he say? My Kamar, he said as follows: the Idna Ahu Yaske Mispedei B'Yerushalayim, by the hesped of Mashiach ben Yosef, there'll be a huge hesped in Yerushalayim. Kemisped the Achav bar Imri, like the hesped for Achav. Achav was a king. The Katan Yosy, who killed him? Hahadrimain ben Tervimain. So when it says Kemisped Hadrimain, it reads Achav, and we would not know this if it wasn't for the Targum, who was killed by Hadrimain. And Uchamisped the Yeshaya ben bar Amain, and like the hesped of Yeshaya Hamelech ben Amain, the Katan Yosy Pari Chagira the Bikas Megiddo, who was killed by Pari Nechei in Bikas Megiddo. So through Targum we know what we're talking about. But now we're talking about two great people in Klal Yisrael who had a great hesped. Aladram Kavachimer, Uma'achav Melech Yisrael, Malach Achav the king of Yisrael. Shaloi Asa Ladover Echatoy. He only did one good thing. He was a Rasha. What good thing did he do? Even though he was shot during the war, if he would have fell and staggered, his army would have fell apart. Yet he stood strong, even though he wasn't. He stood strong in his chariot, so his people should retain their strength. Kach, for that he got this big, huge hesped. It says by Tzidkiyahu Melech, B'Shalom Thomas, you will die in peace. But that's not what happened. It says the Nebuchadnezzar blinded Tzidkiyahu. He had a miserable end of his life. So how could you say he had a good life? Sure, he had some bad things that happened. He was blinded. But the fact is Nebuchadnezzar died while Tzidkiyahu was still alive in prison in Bavel, and he was actually released from prison. It says by Yeshua, the Navi said that he's going to die in peace, and he didn't die in peace, he died in pieces. The archers plunged hundreds of arrows into the king. He was like a sifter. He had so many holes in him. So that's called in the Saftel to Veshech B'Shalom. The Shalom was that Hashem took away Melech Yoshio before the Beis Hamikdash was harmed, so he didn't have to witness that. Okay, we'll stop here because tomorrow we're going to start Maseches Chagiga because we only have a couple of lines on Daf Chav Tes on Aleph to learn, and then we'll start Chagiga. All right, go ahead.